Tēnā tātou katoa.
Elder.
We seek wisdom, understanding, insights into the views and circumstances of others, strength to seek what we believe in, humility to accept the combined decisions of others, patience, good humour at all times, tolerance and courtesy while working in the best interests of the community.
A point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Councillor Newman.
Mr. Chair, it's not technically a point of order, but I just wonder if we could stand for a minute's silence in remembrance of the victims of the tragedy.
It was in my mind
It's in the
to
agenda.
mention that. If I can maybe, maybe I'll take the opportunity to do that now. I think in the last 24 hours, all of us have had in mind the appalling act of terrorism that led to the death of at least 22 people in the city of Manchester and over 60 people injured, some of them very seriously injured. And this may be a time not only to pause to remember those who have died, those who have suffered, and the families who have been bereaved of their children, and some of them were just children, but also for all of us to commit ourselves to a community where we are inclusive, where everybody counts, and where we hope that an act of this nature will never happen in our own city. So if I could ask councillors to stand, and we'll have a moment's silence for the victims of those who died and those who died. Thank you very much. Apologies. We've received apologies from Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore, Councillors Cathy Casey, Christine Fletcher and Dick Quacks. Are there any other apologies? If not, I'll move that we accept those apologies. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded. Councillor Philippina. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any councillors that would wish to declare any interests involved in the agenda today? If not, we come to the minutes. Confirmation of the minutes. We have, you have online the minutes of the governing body meeting of the 23rd of March. So I move that we confirm those minutes. Councillor Simpson is the seconder for that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried. Petitions. No petitions before us today. Public input. I've had one request from Claudia Moran, which I have transferred to the Planning Committee, Councillor Darby, because it relates to Auckland public spaces. I think that's probably the more appropriate forum for that petition, that public input to be given in. Local board input. There has been none for today's meeting. Extraordinary items. Not aware of any extraordinary items. And we come now to item 9, notices of motion. None have been received. And the first substantive item on the agenda is the governance framework review. So if I could ask Linda Taylor, our Program Manager of Governance, Framework Review, and Phil Wilson, Governance Director, to come to the table, please.
And then Shale.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Shale Chambers, who is the Deputy Chair of the Political Working Group, and Shale will be filling in also for Bill Cashmore today, who's not with us. The councillors will recognise that the recommendations are noting recommendations other than the endorsing of the criteria which will be used in terms of assessing options under consideration. We are not looking at the substance so much of the framework review, but rather a progress report on it. I'm happy to entertain some general discussion on it, but I don't think we should get into the details of it. there will be other opportunities for that to happen before the matter comes back to us in August. Also foreshadow that we will be having at least one workshop, I think probably more workshops on this issue. Next Tuesday we'll be looking at the question of the election of ward councillors. So councillors could keep in mind that we will be looking in detail at some of these issues in the future. In the meantime, Linda or Phil going to lead off on this, and then I'll invite Shale to make his comments as a member of the working group.
Thank you, Your Worship. The paper before you basically walks you through the process that we've been through to date. You'll recall that the governance framework review penned by Gareth Stiven as an independent consultant came to the governing body in December last year, and the decision was made to accept that report and refer it to a political working party to be established. The working party being made up of 7 local board members and 7 governing body members. Since then, we've obviously set up a project team and a project plan, which we'll see attached, along with terms of reference for that working party. And we've basically, as staff, been taking that working group through a process of determining a project plan and work program. We decided early on that it would be useful, given the wide range of policy and organisational and governance matters that were being looked at in the review, to develop a set of agreed assessment criteria for the various options that were before the working party. So you will see those assessment criteria in paragraph 11, and we're just looking for the governing body's endorsement of those today. We have 4 work streams underway, and we are currently engaged in taking a series of discussion papers to the working party over the May-June period, and working through options and assessing options. Then we will go into a process of doing workshops with individual local boards and with the governing body through June and July. And as we develop draft recommendations to come back to this meeting in 24th of August. We'll also obviously be going to every local board business meeting towards the end of that process.
Thank you very much, Linda. Phil, is there anything you wish to add to that?
No.
Shale,
No,
could I maybe get you to comment on the progress of the working group?
Just a few comments on progress and observations. First, I want to say that the working party, I believe, is having rigorous debates, but working well together in terms of trying to progress to hopefully consensus outcomes. There's definitely, from a local board perspective, a wish to see greater delegation or allocation and financial parameter decision making. But there's equally my observation from the governing body members, I wish to see the accountability aspects of financial decision making clarified, and so that the decision making of local boards, that there's accountability for those decisions, including property issues. So that's just my take on where the 2 groups are coming from. There's certainly a high level of engagement of the local board members on the working party, and that's probably because the 2 first items have been financial decision making for local boards and a number of local boards, but I'm sure the governing body members will further engage in the upcoming work streams that are more nuanced around the whole of the Auckland Council and its 2 parts. So we're hopeful that those 2 concerns of the respective parts, if I've got that right, can find a happy medium. The tools that are being looked at and further investigation asked for the financial decision making are from local rates through to full delegation of the asset-based decisions within the current or refined local board allocated table A decision-making areas, which is only obviously a small proportion of council's activity. But local board members are mindful of the governing body's concerns, and we hope those will continue to be articulated at the working party. And I'm here today also to hear any of the issues that may be canvassed today and take those back. So we look forward to getting outcomes here and resolving some of those niggles that have been prevalent for 6.5 years.
Thank you very much, Shale, and thank you for the work that you put into that as Deputy Chair. I know you've been working really hard on it. I'll move the motion so that it's on the screen in front of you, which you'll recognise notes that this is set up to assess how well the governance model is meeting its aims. The political working group is currently in the process of looking at the options, the criteria under which they are assessing those options, which Council, the governing body, is being asked to endorse, and noting that there will be extensive engagement with elected representatives ahead of this report coming back, I think, on the 24th of August. So I'll move that way. Have I got a seconder? Seconded Councillor Simpson. Right, I think if we start off maybe with questions to officials or to our Deputy Chair. May be that it's all self-evident. Councillor Simpson?
I've just got a question, thanks, Your Worship. I think it's one of the reasons that we set up this process that there was 50% attendance at the working group of the governing body and 50% by local boards. And I suppose what I've been hearing, and I just want clarification, that have you had that even attendance consistent at those meetings? Because if not, there could be weighed one way or t'other, if there is a one way or t'other. But I just think it's important just to have a good understanding about the balance through discussions.
Your Worship, if I might comment on that. Look, getting perfect attendance is preferred, and I haven't been taking detailed notes around this, but I'd have to say I think we do need more consistent, better turnout of the governing body members on the working party. Sorry. Having said that, I don't think it's hampering the debate or sort of diluting the two perspectives, governing body and local board, being put into the debate. And there are checks and balances. As Shale said, the terms of reference are such that it's seeking consensus outcomes around the table. It won't come down, hopefully, to a vote that is, influenced by who's in the room, numbers-wise, at the end of the day, because it'll be the product of some pretty robust analysis, options papers, debate round the table successfully, all of which during the process is going to be socialised through local boards and with the governing body in separate workshops and other meeting processes before we land in August at a decision-making point. So, and there will be some professional officer advice in there. If I could just make one other point, if that is a kind of concern, my observation of the debate is that it's pretty balanced, to be honest. When we've been talking about financial delegations, there is absolutely a recognition from local board representatives that there is some regional imperatives around consistency of service levels, management of capital investment around the network of service delivery assets and such like. So we're not. I'd have to say we're not seeing a sort of an imbalanced discussion around that table, but there are members of the working party here who are probably in a position to comment as well.
Thank you very much, Phil. I just want to stress to councillors, I know councillors are busy and sometimes there are clashes in requirements. There have been 3 meetings so far, we've got 4 more to go. It is important that we get as a fuller turnout as possible by councillors. I'm conscious that at least one of our councillors has been off work recovering from an operation for some time, so she's not able to be there. But we do need to, this is an important process, and we do need a good turnout of those that have agreed to represent the governing body on it. Councillor Hills, a question.
It was just sort of following up the loop. Yeah, I think that, I think I've been at all three, but I think it would be good to see everyone, or as many as possible, of councillors there, especially as the chairs are coming from all over to meet us. And I think it may, be disappointing to some local board chairs when there isn't, there's only 3 or 4 of us. But in saying that, I think the debate has been pretty balanced, and I know I've been quite vocal on most of the issues, which has also helped because I've been on a local board as well, and now I have the experience of being on the governing body as well. But I'd just like to thank Shale and the chairs, for coming and putting a lot of effort and time and thought into all sides of all issues. So I think it's been a pretty good conversation so far. But I also, it's about making sure that the things we're asking for, or the perfect solutions to everything, from a local board perspective and a governing body perspective, has consequences as well. So it's just making sure that we get all that information to know really what we're asking for and the effects those decisions will have, good or bad, on either side of the ledger. So hopefully we have a better clarity going forward. Just one other thing, we were at the Roads and Streets framework yesterday, and I spoke to the Auckland Transport about the fact that, one of the big things was around placemaking and town centres and decisions, and really putting that to the local board, and they were very receptive of that, and they were aware of the governance framework review. So that would be another space where, just making sure the local boards have real clear decision making within a policy, within a framework, but still, clear kind of goals for their communities on the really people-facing things that are going on. So
we have good engagement from Auckland Transport, and Linda and I have presented to the board at that level on this.
That's on the schedule for the 21st of June working party meeting.
Thank you. I've got 3 other councillors. Have we got questions at this stage where, if you like, I can move straight into comment, but if you've got a specific question, I'll take those with a specific question first. Wayne Walker, Councillor Wayne Walker.
Quick question, would it be appropriate to have some alternates?
That was a question I was going to ask.
Yeah.
What's the point of having someone away for the whole part of the
Yeah.
year and then not being there?
I think it may be appropriate to have alternates, but I'm not sure. Councillor Casey is recuperating, and hopefully she'll be back on her feet, literally, reasonably soon. But perhaps I could get an indication from councillors. I don't think there's any impediment to us having alternate members, Marguerite.
I don't think that would be a good idea.
I don't think I'll...
I am worried if we're getting 7 local board chairs turning up, and we are not coming close to matching that, not because of any vote, because this is being done to the extent possible through consensus, but just in terms of a visible commitment by the governing body to the process. And if we are consistently underrepresented on that, I think it sends a bad message. Is there any constitutional issue around having alternates here?
Just the consistency.
Councillor Hill, you expressed a concern about
I think,
that?
personally, having alternates would, I believe, make the process probably a little bit confusing and frustrating, especially for the local board chairs. I think re-explaining the information, at least, the members who maybe haven't been at 1 or 2 meetings are aware of what's going on, the information's coming back and forward, and they've been able to feed back through emails and such. So I think it might be unfair on the team as well, the council team, to then be redoing that work with alternate.
It makes it more complex, but if it was a choice between having the governing body represented with 3 people or 7 people, I'd go with the complexity. Look, I think the obligation, and it is an obligation on councillors, unless there is a strong reason to the contrary, if you accept the role of being on this group, to turn up at it. But I am conscious that because Councillor Casey has been receiving treatment, that she hasn't been able to do it. She would love to have been there, I'm sure. But I don't want to see low representation of councillors on this body. I think it's important. So I think the obligation is on councillors to do their best to turn up, but having an alternate would be a good idea in the event. I don't think it would be disruptive, but it would at least ensure that our numbers would be up there. But I'm welcome any other alternative comment on that. Anybody else want to comment on it? Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. And I mean, it's unfortunate for Councillor Casey that I'm sure she didn't expect she'd be away for so long, but she hasn't been part of the conversation. I don't think alternates are a good idea because you're popping in and out and you don't get the continuity. I think you're better to just replace the people that, with a discussion with them to say, look, this is where we're at, are you going to be able to make it, and put 1 or 2 new people in there to carry on the rest of the conversation, and then you've got continuity of people that can actually are going to make the commitment. That's my thoughts. Alternates are not a good idea because, you know, they aren't in the stream of conversation, and even if Councillor Casey can come back, she's missed the whole lot, so it's no different from having an alternate. That's just my view.
Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Oh,
Councillor Collins, sorry.
So I just wanted to say that I'm not opposed to alternates, and being someone who's on the group but has missed a couple of the meetings, being on leave myself, I don't think this is a discussion around who in particular hasn't been able to come. The issue is we haven't been able to get a full complement of councillors there. We need to be honest about that, and I'm happy to look at ways in which we can. We're going to end up with that complexity that you talk about, and it's a complexity I think that we're just going to have to navigate our way through so that we do get a full complement of people there. When we had the original discussion, I know that Councillor Filipaina and myself were talking about which one of us was going to be, and I think part of the rationale for me going on to it was because I had been part of the discussion as chair of the local board previously, but I'm open to the idea of alternates.
Okay. Councillor Walker on this point?
Sure. I mean, I would have thought that in a situation like this, you've got some meetings, you've got staff that are more than competent to give someone a briefing. I certainly have a good relationship with a number of councillors. I can get up to speed on things pretty quickly. I've been an alternate on much more complex exercises than this. So I just toss that in.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to make up the numbers to make sure that we have some representation, because I think that's critical.
Okay. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I am not opposed to alternates. As Councillor Collins has just said, we do talk about what has been discussed around it, and I think it's imperative that if we do go down the road of alternates, that the most important thing is actually discussing with your alternate what's been discussed at previous meetings. So I'm not opposed to it, and so I mean, if there is, I mean, I'll be the alternate if it goes through with Councillor Collins, and take my name off the list now, because this is the issue I wanted to ask. So that's it.
Thank you. Any further comment? I might come back, Councillor Simpson, I might come back shortly and ask officials at the end of the table, and maybe Shale if you've got thoughts on that matter, but Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to really make it very clear this was not in any way personal. It was actually about a process. It was about a process that we've put together, the times and meeting schedules, that if staff know, I mean, Councillor Casey is an absolute exception, you know?
Yeah.
Absolute. This is not about her. This is actually about diarising things that if people are on leave or whatever, that they either can speak to those people before and get that information, or ask those, I mean, someone could have rung her and asked for her input, you know? It's actually about a process. It's about are we as a council following good process when people put their hands up to be on something, that the meetings are scheduled when they are available, and if they're not, what is plan B? That's really where I was coming from. It was not about who, you know, didn't come or didn't. It wasn't about specific. It's actually about trying to make this work. If it can work for the local boards, and they're miles, you know, they're all over the show and they've got their own busy work schedule, we should be putting our hand up and showing that same level of commitment. And if we can't, what is the vehicle or way that we can get our thoughts to that table? That's where I was coming from.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Simpson. Shale, do you have a view on that as to how it might work? From your
when the working
perspective?
party was established, it was made clear in the original terms of reference that you were making a commitment and you were on. So no local boards who went through, delegates who went through an election process in their respective areas have made provision for alternates. Just point that out. The intention was to have a consistent group who could develop a cohesiveness and working arrangement to come to a consensus outcome, and alternates sometimes complicate that process. Having said that, of course, what the working party has been doing to date is eliminating options that they don't wish to take forward. So we haven't really got to the crunchy bit of actually making recommendations yet, and that doesn't happen till July. So the 2 meetings in June are a continuation of receiving the options, exploring those, and asking for the ones that have some merit to be taken forward and further work on. So alternates aren't probably critical at that point. It would be good, obviously, to have a full turnout. I would imagine the July meeting will be a full turnout if people can come, because that's the crunchy point. So I'm just saying local boards haven't been offered that opportunity, but a resolution, if an alternates were thought have merit, should universally apply, perhaps subject to the chair's okay if they can't make it, of the working party, so that it applies equally to local boards. But I can't anticipate local boards wishing to take it up, but it should be universal.
Okay, sure. Phil, comments from you?
Your Worship, in terms of the sentiment that I'm picking up in the room, I've put a new C on there. That's framed in a way that would allow for members to be permanently substituted. If you want to have it as framed as an alternate, so that we get 7 at each meeting, and it just happens to be that somebody can't make it and you want to substitute for the purpose of that meeting, I think you'd just drop the last part of that resolution out. So I'll take your direction on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, look, there are different opinions around the table, but I've been an alternate in many meetings over many years, and as an alternate, your obligation is to come up to speed with what's on the agenda. It's not perfect. It's a second best solution to the original person being on the committee, but I think that we need to have a full participation and a full attendance at these meetings. I think everybody that's on the political working group has got the message that they've got to make a real effort to get there. But I would support recommendation C, finishing at the word chair, I think. And knowing that that is second best, but it's better than having a poor turnout of councillors, which I think sends the wrong message. But just to urge councillors at the same time, if you're a member of the working group, please make every effort to get there. Continuity is much better than having a substitute. So I don't know whether maybe I should put it formally. If you think wise, deleting the words after chair, but the resolution as it stands, I'll move that way. Councillor Filipaina.
Chair, I think it's been moved in second, but I have a question in regards to an example of if councillors wish to attend and only attend, but basically just don't open their mouth at the meetings. Is that an option? I mean, can that happen?
Impossible. Impossible.
Oh, yeah, but that's for some of yous.
Have a voice
I mean, it's not impossible. It's not impossible to me. But I mean, the reason I'm asking this particular question is this: is that if we go down, or there's a possibility that I am the alternate for Councillor Collins, and he can make the meeting, I still, if I'm free, would want to be at least in the room. I will not participate, even though most of the councillors in here will end up participating, but I will not participate. But that's just an option for me, that if I am free, I can sit in that room and at least listen to the conversation. That's my question. Is there an ability for that to happen?
Yep.
Thank you.
At the present time, as I understand the constitution of the working group, local board members and councillors and IMSB members can be there. I think they can participate but not vote. Am I correct on that, Linda?
Through the chair, the terms of reference are silent on that issue. So as far as I'd be
The normal
concerned,
procedure in a
it
working
would
group like this
absolutely
is that
attend,
we,
yeah.
with approval of the chair, if local board members wanted to sit in and listen, would be able to do so, or councillors likewise, but not vote. I think that would be
Yeah.
the normal standing order self.
Oh, cool, because
So-
I'll be like the terms of reference, I will be silent if councillor Collins is there.
Yeah.
like to see
Can I just clarify one other point? There won't be alternates for each member. There'd be, I'd suggest, we've had 2 volunteers. We have alternates in the event that any councillor is unable to attend. So let me just see if I just test the mood of the meeting with this. It's procedural, but I think I should do it. Those in favour of the amendment that's been made as the new recommendation 3, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Sorry, a
I think
point of order?
We hadn't finished the discussion. We suddenly leapt into this and you were
No,
having
no, no,
questions
I'm
first.
if you've got something that you want to add to the question, I'm happy to take the
Oh,
call.
sorry,
I'm not
so
trying
are
to.
you doing this bit and then
I'm
going
just,
back
I'm
into
just
the
so
discussion?
that it,
Oh.
I could probably, I don't know, move from the chair or just as a chair accept that amendment and then put it as a vote at the end. I thought I'd test the mood of the councillors because there was divided opinion on it.
That's all right.
So it's
As a seconder, I'm happy
it's to add that to the recommendations.
As a seconder, I'm happy for it to be part of the
Okay, it's been
recommendation.
been incorporated. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, and thank you, Chair. I'm speaking as Linda had asked me as the governing body rep who's been there to speak on this. I'm not opposed to that, but I will say that this whole thing is around the co-governance working together. The local boards went through a very long process of a lot of people wanting to be on it. They went through sort of choosing 7 people. They wanted a larger number of people, and we as a council voted that down and decreased that number. So I just want to be careful when we start going, we can have 10 around a table and adding people in and swapping people out, that we need to be cognizant of what the local boards went through to get their 7, and just so that it's... So I'm okay with whoever turning up, but it's just, we just need to know that everything we make also then reflects on local board chairs.
Absolutely take on board the point, and I've made the point, but I'll repeat it. The very best solution is to have everybody that has been appointed to the board to turn up, but there will be occasions on which people, for very good reasons, can't. I would rather have a full membership than a partial membership, which has been the record to date. So I accept your point, Councillor Hill. It's been that's been seconded. Councillor Clow.
So I'm looking at an invite for Tuesday where all the councillors have been invited to come along, and the subject matter is wards and whether the ward structure is right for the councillors. I don't know whether I want to be here if I can't speak, because I may not be able to contain myself if I listen to the views of some people who may want to go wards at large,
That's different.
for example.
It's not the working party, that's your workshop.
That's our workshop, Ross. So
please
people
do
aren't
speak.
determining
It didn't
that
come
on our
across like
behalf.
that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's been accepted and incorporated. People still have the ability to vote against it if they wish, if you want it taken separately at the end. If I go back to the speaking order, Councillor John Watson.
Thank you. More of a question by way of a comment, if you don't mind, Mr Mayor. Just wondering, in terms of the wider engagement amongst local boards, we have the working party of, largely local board chairs, and notwithstanding the fact that we've been incredibly well served by our chair leadership over the years, not least of which by one of the individuals here, there is a sentiment in some of the local boards that the view of local board members aren't always captured in this. So what I'm wondering, Phil, given that we have different structures within local boards, subdivisions and different arrangements between chairs and deputies, is there the opportunity to capture that diversity of view that might come from local board members but might not necessarily emerge from just the working party?
In short, yes, we have a range of mechanisms. We're doing some local board cluster meetings currently. Several have already happened. We also have workshop time and formal meeting time with all of the 21 local boards, so they will absolutely have visibility of everything that's going on and a chance to comment.
Thank you very much. Now, I think I've exhausted the questions. Are there any further general comments on this from councillors? Councillor Cooper?
Thank you. I think it's a good piece of work that we're doing, and we always knew that, you know, we were given the raw sort of framework to start with, and we're 7th year in, and we know there's some tricky bits that work and some good bits that work. I guess I just, as not being part of the group, want to know that we're not trying to get the governance arrangement almost back to a pseudo what it was before, because I don't want us to have gone through all this pain to try and almost get back to where we were before, because that's not really an option. But if we're doing it in a kind of a way where, I mean, my concern is we've got to get the balance right, that we're not doing silly things as we were before, where we'd have a major arterial, or one city council would upgrade it and the other one wouldn't, you know, and so you'd have a strip of road which was half done and half not, you know, when everybody live locally, but we also live regionally, and I'm hoping that what comes out of here is something that is workable, that doesn't actually cut the regional overview out, because that's really important, and not just back to the air, land and water stuff, but actually have that overview, because councillors actually do have the responsibility, the financial responsibility, and even with delegations, I'd hope that we get to the point where we're not continuing the blame game of how much people are getting, they're not getting enough and all that, because we actually need to really work together. And I think that's what I hope to see, that we still have a regional overview, we take care of the local needs, but we get to the point where we're working cohesively. So I think that's the message that I'd want to see, not more of a split, but working together better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's encompassed in the primary purpose of this review, which was to deliver strong regional decision-making, but complemented by the need to meet diverse local needs and interests. So that is the framework, and it is seen as a collaborative one. So your point's well made, and I think that's accepted.
I'm trying not to talk about the political imperatives here, Mr. Chairman, and the fact that in the end, everybody will be politically inputting from it, and we can't help it as politicians, that there will be an inherent power play, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, it's just what we do, and I just hope that we can kind of step out of sight of that and make something that's going to work for Auckland.
I think what the purpose of the exercise is to find where the proper balance. The aim was set in the legislation. We're not changing the legislation, we're not changing the primary purpose of the governance arrangements, but we're trying to make sure that they can work as well as they can within that structure. And I think the comments I'm hearing back from Shell Chambers and from our officials is that the working group is working down the lines of common sense and balance, and I welcome that. I think that's very positive.
Good, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay, any further comments from councillors? Otherwise, we'll put the recommendations. Okay, it's the recommendations there have been moved and seconded. Are you happy to take those recommendations as a group? So I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 To the contrary, no. Carried. And just foreshadowing it in relation to recommendation C, I've had two councillors volunteer to be alternates, Councillor Walker and Councillor Filipaina. So I think that's probably a sufficient pool to draw from, in line with the fact we expect most of the councillors who are generally required to be there. Okay, we come now to item number 11 on the agenda, the Independent Maori Statutory Board and the proposed funding agreement. If I could ask Ed Siddle and Phil Wilson to come to the table, please. Ed, you might like to make some comments, and I'll move the motion and we can come to questions.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'll keep my comments really short this morning. This report is to approve the annual funding agreement for the Independent Māori Statutory Board, and this follows the February report which you considered, which established a political working party to consider the proposed agreement. We're required by legislation to fund the IMSB. The key feature of this year's agreement is an increase to undertake the 3-yearly Treaty of Waitangi audit. The audit's a key tool used to measure Council's performance in terms of statutory provisions related to the treaty and how our performance improves over time. The IMSB has budgeted for savings across other areas, such as specialist expertise, professional services, research and monitoring, in order to accommodate the cost of the audit, and by doing this, avoid a major increase overall. The political working party has considered the proposed agreement, and I understand it's comfortable with it, so we recommend that you approve the funding agreement for the forthcoming year. Thank you.
Chair is absent temporarily. Thank you very much for that, Ed. It's been moved by Councillor Filipaina and seconded by Councillor Collins that the recommendations to approve the funding agreement be accepted, and the noting recommendations. We come now to questions of our officials. I have Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Could you please tell me, in your experience, if the quote for the audit is a reasonable quote, and whether we got more than one quote? In other words, we're getting best value for money for the amount of the audit.
Through your worship, I'd actually have to refresh my memory about what procurement process was gone through. The work, I think, has previously been done by PwC, so obviously a reputable provider of that service. But I couldn't sit here and give you detail around the procurement process underpinning that. I can say more generally the IMSB is subject to audit to the same extent we are, and in my experience are pretty robust in their processes.
So supplementary. So, Mr.
Supplementary.
Your Worship, what I'm really getting to is, look, I don't think we have any choice. I mean, the place has to be audited, that's fine, but I just want to know that we have actually tendered out and got some options, and we've got best value for money with the amount of, with the person, with the company doing the audit and the cost that it's being, we're asked to front up and pay for. That was my question.
I take it from the answer to that, Phil, that we follow the same process with the IMSB as we do for any other expenditure within council. But I'm not personally aware of whether how you determine who is going to audit. Can you throw some light on that, what the general process is?
Well, the general process is a contestable registration of interest or tender process to establish who's got the best means to do it and the price. I'm confident that that is the case, but I will take it up particularly with the chair of the board, if that's your wish.
Okay, I think we can come back, but the message I'm getting is that this is audited in exactly the same way, and the auditor is chosen in exactly the same way, but it may be offline, Phil, that you can talk to Councillor Simpson about that.
Best value for money, Mr.
Yeah. No objection to that. Councillor John Watson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to check that my understanding is correct with regards point 14 here, and as it goes to the independent review of the IMSB members' remuneration. So it states that this review suggests it be set at 68% of elected members' remuneration, so I take that to be a councillor.
That's correct, and that view or that ratio, if you like, was established through some work with strategic pay quite early in the life of the IMSB, and therefore it changes probably modestly, I hate to tell you, when councillors' pay is changed, and we're expecting a determination from the authority later in June.
Okay, so basically that's establishing, I guess, a kind of comparison, 7/10 of the work of a councillor, if there's a correlation between workload and pay, which we assume there is. I just wonder in terms of perhaps a wider picture of comparability, therefore with respect of, say, local boards. I understand this is set up by legislation and as an independent review. If the local board average sits around about 40,000, which roughly it is, what that level of comparison does for overall comparability between another part of council, or i.e. that seems to be out of sync for me in terms when I look at the quantity of remuneration when we compare different parts of governors within the Auckland Council. That's the point I'm making, and quite a significant one.
All I can say is that that was robustly tested by Strategic Pay as an independent consultant.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further requests for questions. Are there any?
I have a question.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. It was just, I guess more, we've had a big request for savings in all the CCOs and our own operations division. Is the same ability to ask for savings cuts available for us for the IMSB, or is this just a machinery where we can't do that because they're independent?
This funding agreement's the product of negotiation and review and such like. Yes, we can ask for them to trim, but I have to advise you that if we were going to do that, we should have done it earlier in the process, and the purpose of having the political working party input was to test with a subgroup of you comfort. So I would have a concern.
No, that was just the question was, had the same question been asked of the IMSB, and letters which have been sent to our CCOs and our own operational to save millions of dollars, I just wondered why that wouldn't have happened at the same time. When you're saying you can't do it now, I understand you can't do it now, but why wouldn't we have had the same approach?
What I can say is that the budget pressure that everyone is under currently, that was communicated to the IMSB. If you understand what's happening within their budget now, they have made economies in order to be able to deal with the spike in costs because of the audit work that happens every 3 years. So I think they actually have accommodated that,
I can see some.
that context.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to any general discussion on the report. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Mine was actually a question, and that just goes to the remuneration for members. So is the remuneration based on a remuneration per member, or is it remuneration around a function which can then be split between members? How does that work?
No, it's determined on a per member basis with special consideration to the chair.
And just around then the number of members, is it possible to consolidate the number of members so that you've got less members, but there could be some advantages around that if you've got members that are more informed comprehensively around issues rather than a lot more that are spread.
Through the Mayor, the membership is a function of the statute. It's legislated.
Yep. It's pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Quacks, did you have a question? Oh, sorry, no, I just noticed your mic was lit up. Any further comment? If not, I'll... it's been... Sorry, Councillor Filipaina.
Chair, I just want to comment just to congratulate the working group, and especially if you have a look at the consistency with the statute, and you've mentioned that, to meet reasonable costs and everything else. But I just wanted to congratulate the working group with coming through the whole process around this. This has been an issue which is has had comment, and it should have comment over the last 6 years. So Yeah, I just want to congratulate the working group in regards to the position we've reached. That's all I wanted to say, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. If there's no further comment, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried. Just